Picture this. A man storms into a room with his chest puffed out, his voice booming louder than necessary, his body language screaming, "Don't mess with me." Everyone notices. Heads turn. Some people even shrink back, giving him the space he so desperately claims. To the untrained eye, he looks powerful, untouchable, in control. But to Niccolo Machiavelli, the master of power and strategy, this man is nothing more than a fool. Why? Because real power never has to announce itself. The louder someone shouts, the more fragile their position usually is. The more aggressively someone acts, the more they reveal their insecurity. You see, the man who constantly tries to prove his strength is not strong at all. He is broadcasting to the entire room the very weakness he is trying to conceal. That deep down, he does not feel powerful, and he is terrified you will see it. And here lies the paradox. The tough guy believes his dominance commands respect. In truth, it repels the very people who matter. The strong, the strategic, the intelligent, they see right through the act. They recognize it as desperation. They calculate his blind spots. And while he thinks he is winning ground, they are already planning how to dismantle him. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He warned that the moment you feel compelled to act tough, you've already lost the game of power. Because real predators don't need to roar. They wait. They watch. They strike silently and precisely. And the world remembers not the man who shouted the loudest, but the one who never had to shout at all. So the real question is, what kind of strength are you chasing? The loud, fragile performance of toughness, or the quiet, indestructible strength that no one dares to challenge? If this opening is already making you rethink the way you view strength and power, then now is the time to take action. Hit the like button if this message resonates with you. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next video. Because what comes next is a deep exploration into Machiavelli's most misunderstood lessons, insights that could change not only how others see you, but how you see yourself. Think about the last time you saw someone trying too hard to dominate a space. Maybe it was the coworker who slammed his fist on the table during a meeting. Maybe it was the guy at the gym who flexed in every mirror and grunted louder than necessary. Maybe it was the stranger at a bar who couldn't let a harmless comment slide without turning it into a confrontation. On the surface, these men want you to believe they are in control. But if you look closer, you'll notice something else: fear. Machiavelli would say that the tough guy is not respected. He is merely tolerated. People nod along, not because they admire him, but because they don't want to deal with his volatility. Behind the fake smiles, they're making silent calculations. Some distance themselves, knowing he cannot be trusted with real responsibility. Others watch closely, storing his weaknesses for the day they might use them against him. What the tough guy calls power, the world recognizes as instability. This confusion mistaking noise for authority, aggression for confidence, intimidation for respect is everywhere. Walk into almost any gym, office, or social gathering, and you will see it play out. Men puffing up their chests, trying to win invisible battles. Every interaction becomes a test of dominance, a stage performance designed to impress people who are not impressed at all. In truth, the louder someone tries to appear powerful, the more obvious it becomes that they aren't. And here is the tragedy. The performance of toughness doesn't just fail to inspire it, actively destroys the possibility of real influence. When you act tough, you close the door on trust. You attract the wrong allies, opportunists who will use you as a weapon, or weak followers who cling to your aggression because they lack courage themselves. Neither will stand beside you when it truly matters. And those who could have been valuable allies, the competent, the thoughtful, the strategic, walk away entirely. They want nothing to do with someone who confuses intimidation with leadership. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers never to make themselves hated. Fear and respect are not the same thing. When people fear your volatility, they don't admire you, they plot against you. They wait for the moment you overstep, because overstepping is inevitable. The tough guy always writes checks that his ability cannot cash. He escalates small conflicts into unwinnable wars. He turns minor disagreements into major disasters. And when reality strikes back, it strikes harder than he ever imagined. Consider the common scenarios. At work, the tough guy lashes out at a colleague, believing he is showing strength. What he doesn't realize is that every outburst is being noted, forwarded, and filed. In the gym, the tough guy throws his weight around until one day he challenges the wrong person. Someone who doesn't need to prove themselves because their strength is real. Online, the tough guy talks trash, only to discover that words can be screenshotted, shared, and turned into evidence that ruins reputations. This is what Machiavelli called the blindness of the tyrant. The illusion that submission equals loyalty, that silence equals respect, that intimidation equals influence. In truth, people comply on the surface while secretly building cases, alliances, and resistance behind your back. The tough guy believes he has conquered the room, but in reality, he has painted a target on himself. And here's the cruelest irony. The harder someone works to look powerful, the less powerful they actually are. Because true strength never needs an audience. It never needs a performance. It doesn't show up in loud gestures or exaggerated threats. It shows up in results, in competence, in consistency. Machiavelli understood this long before modern psychology confirmed it. The performance of power is a symptom of weakness. The absence of performance, that quiet confidence, is what reveals the real thing. So why do so many men fall into this trap? Why do they keep acting tough even though it sabotages their relationships, their careers, and their inner peace? The answer lies not in strength, but in fear. Fear of being exposed, fear of being overlooked, fear of being vulnerable. And that fear, disguised as dominance, is the very weakness that keeps them trapped in a cycle of aggression and self-destruction. This is the paradox we need to confront. Because until we understand why acting tough backfires, we will continue to mistake the performance for the substance. And in doing so, we will not only misunderstand others, we will misunderstand ourselves. Machiavelli once said, "A wise man does at once what a fool does at last." The fool acts first and only later considers the consequences. This is the essence of the tough guy mistake. He escalates, he threatens, he dominates not because the situation demands it, but because his ego cannot tolerate anything less. He plays the short game of appearances, never realizing that true power is built in the long game of outcomes. The danger with acting tough is simple. The moment you escalate, you lose control. You light a fuse without knowing how long it is or what it's connected to. Maybe the fuse burns out with nothing more than embarrassment. Or maybe it explodes in ways that change your life forever. Toughness is a gamble where the best outcome is that nothing happens, and the worst outcome is catastrophic. Let's break this down with examples that Machiavelli would recognize, and that we see play out every single day. The workplace bully. In the modern office, the tough guy disguises himself as the manager who leads with intimidation. He slams doors, raises his voice, and uses fear to control his team. At first, it looks effective. People comply. Projects move forward. But behind the scenes, something very different is happening. His emails are being forwarded. His confrontations are being documented. His reputation spreads upward, not as a strong leader, but as a liability. Human resources, upper management, and even competitors quietly build a case against him. He thinks people respect him, but in reality, they're waiting for the day he self-destructs. Machiavelli called this the blindness of the tyrant, the inability to see that obedience often hides rebellion. The gym alpha. Then there's the gym. You've seen him. The man who takes up unnecessary space, grunts louder than everyone else, and treats the weight room like his personal kingdom. He believes this display makes him the alpha. But here's the truth, everyone around him sees it as insecurity. And one day, he runs into someone real, a professional fighter, a man with silent discipline. And in that moment, the loud performance of toughness collapses in the face of authentic strength. Machiavelli would call this the inevitable fall of the man who fights battles he cannot win. The bar confrontation. Consider the bar tough guy. A casual insult turns into a heated argument. He feels he can't back down without losing face, so he steps closer, louder, more aggressive. He thinks he's establishing dominance. In reality, he's inviting chaos. The other man could be armed, connected, or simply more ruthless. What began as a minor disagreement escalates into violence, police involvement, or worse. The tough guy loses everything because he couldn't control his emotions. Machiavelli's wisdom echoes here. Never wage a war you cannot win. The digital warrior. And finally, the online world. Acting tough on social media feels easy hiding behind a screen, firing insults, projecting aggression. But in a world of screenshots, recordings, and digital permanence, every word becomes evidence. Employers check profiles. Courts accept posts as documentation. Enemies can track your information, dox you, and ruin your reputation. The modern tough guy believes he's untouchable, but he's actually more exposed than ever. Visibility equals vulnerability. These examples reveal the same pattern. When you act tough, you are not gaining power, you are handing it away. You make yourself predictable. Predictable people are easy to manipulate, easy to isolate, easy to destroy. Machiavelli knew that real power is not in the performance of strength, but in the strategic use of it. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel. In other words, people make decisions about you based on what they observe. And what do they observe when you act tough? Not strength, instability, not confidence, fear, not leadership, weakness. The irony is painful. Acting tough isolates you socially and professionally. People begin to avoid you, not just your enemies, but your allies too. They don't invite you to key meetings because they fear your volatility. They don't involve you in strategic decisions because they can't predict your reaction. You become a storm that everyone quietly works around. And the more isolated you become, the more aggressive you act, creating a vicious cycle of insecurity, feeding aggression, aggression feeding insecurity. Meanwhile, the people you dismiss as weak, the quiet, the diplomatic, the patient, are building networks. They're forming alliances. They're establishing reputations as trustworthy, competent, and reliable. And when power shifts, as it always does, they're the ones positioned to rise. The tough guy, for all his noise, becomes irrelevant. Machiavelli was clear. The best fortress which a prince can possess is the affection of the people. Not fear based on aggression, but fear based on competence. The quiet recognition that you are too valuable to lose. That your absence would be more dangerous than your presence. This is the foundation of real power. The performance of toughness is nothing but a mask, and like all masks, it eventually slips. The real predators, the strategic thinkers, the silent observers, the calculating planners, are simply waiting. They don't need to prove themselves in petty confrontations. They save their power for decisive moments. And when they strike, the tough guy never sees it coming. This is why acting tough is the worst thing you can do. It isn't strength, it's self-sabotage. It's not power, it's a performance that makes you weaker. And the sooner you see this truth, the sooner you can stop wasting energy on the mask and start building real influence. So where does this leave us? If acting tough is the worst thing you can do, then what's the alternative? How do you stop performing power and start embodying it? Machiavelli, misread by so many as an advocate for cold cruelty, actually gives us a roadmap to something deeper: strategic strength. And modern psychology confirms what he already knew: real power is not about aggression, but about competence, adaptability, and influence. Let us begin with the first truth. Secure people don't need to prove their security. Confident people don't need to advertise their confidence. Strong people don't need to demonstrate their strength in every room they enter. Acting tough is performance. Real strength is presence. Step 1. Redefine power. Machiavelli famously said, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." For centuries, this has been misunderstood as a call to intimidation. But look closer. He wasn't talking about fear of aggression. He was talking about fear of competence. The fear of losing someone so capable, so reliable, so indispensable that opposing them would be foolish. Real fear, in Machiavelli's sense, isn't about scaring people into submission. It is about creating a track record so solid that others hesitate to cross you because they know they cannot afford to. That's not performance, that's value. Step 2. Embrace strategic silence. One of the most underestimated powers in the modern world is silence. In a culture obsessed with quick reactions, instant comebacks, and public displays of dominance, silence unsettles people. It forces them to wonder what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you're capable of. Nietzsche once noted that silence can be more destabilizing than words. Jung called it an act of psychic strength. When you resist the urge to escalate, when you choose pause over reaction, you deny others the ability to control you. The tough guy is a puppet. Anyone can pull his strings with a minor insult. The strong man, the strategic man, chooses when to respond, and more importantly, when not to. That restraint is power. Step 3. Build competence, not intimidation. Think of the people you genuinely respect. They're not the loudest in the room. They don't force respect, they earn it through results. They are the colleagues whose work is flawless, the leaders whose judgment you trust, the friends who stay calm when everyone else panics. Their authority isn't declared. It's experienced. If you want real power, stop trying to control people with volume or aggression. Start focusing on being valuable. Build skills that others depend on. Deliver results consistently. Develop knowledge, expertise, and reliability. When people see you as competent, they won't just comply with you, they'll seek you out. Step 4. The lion and the fox. Machiavelli wrote, "A prince ought to be both a fox and a lion. The lion is strong, the fox is cunning. The lion can frighten wolves but falls into traps. The fox can avoid traps but is vulnerable to wolves. Alone, each is incomplete. Together, they form real power." The problem with the tough guy is that he only knows how to be the lion. All aggression, no subtlety. All force, no strategy. But the world is not a jungle, it's a chessboard. The fox survives where the lion dies because the fox knows when to attack, when to retreat, when to wait. The modern man who balances both force and strategy becomes unpredictable, adaptable, and ultimately, untouchable. Step 5. Drop the mask. Here's the harsh truth. The longer you perform toughness, the more it drains you. It creates what psychologists call the imposter trap, living a life where you cannot show vulnerability, cannot admit mistakes, cannot ask for help, because you fear it would break the character you've built. And that trap leads to isolation, burnout, and collapse. The awakening comes when you realize that dropping the act doesn't make you weaker, it makes you stronger. When you allow yourself to be authentic, people can actually trust you. When you admit what you don't know, people respect your honesty. When you show vulnerability in the right context, people see you as human, not a mask. And paradoxically, this makes you more powerful, not less. Step 6. Choose influence over fear. The foundation of lasting power is influence, not intimidation. Machiavelli himself wrote, "The best fortress which a prince can possess is the affection of the people." Aggression can create compliance, but only influence creates loyalty. Fear makes people obey when you're watching. Respect makes them act in your favor even when you're not. The leaders who build empires, the thinkers who shape cultures, the individuals who are remembered long after they're gone, they didn't dominate through fear alone. They cultivated influence. They built alliances. They created networks of trust. And this kind of power is not only stronger, it's sustainable. Step 7. Understand visibility equals vulnerability. The tough guy makes himself the center of every room. He demands attention, and in doing so, makes himself a target. Everyone knows his strengths, and therefore, everyone can predict his weaknesses. Machiavelli warned against this. Power, he said, grows not in being seen everywhere, but in being underestimated. When people don't fully grasp what you're capable of, they tread lightly. They avoid conflict because they cannot calculate the risk. That ambiguity, that mystery is power. Step 8. Real strength is quiet. At the end of the day, the most dangerous people in any room are rarely the loudest. They are the ones who watch quietly, who calculate patiently, who move only when necessary. They don't burn energy trying to appear powerful, they conserve it to be powerful when it matters. The irony is beautiful. The moment you stop trying to look strong, you begin to feel genuinely strong. The moment you stop chasing dominance, you begin to embody influence. And the moment you stop performing, you begin living in a way that others cannot ignore. This is the transformation Machiavelli would demand of you. Not the act of power, but the substance of it. Not the noise of toughness, but the silence of competence. Not the fragile mask of aggression, but the unshakable foundation of strategic strength. And now, the choice is yours. Will you remain the actor, trapped in a role that exhausts you? Or will you step into the quiet, lasting power that needs no audience? It's a word that has been twisted, abused, and misunderstood for centuries. To many, it looks like domination, loud voices, clenched fists, and the constant need to be feared. But as Machiavelli, Nietzsche, and Jung all understood, this is a child's view of strength. True power is never about performance. It is about presence. If you've stayed with me until this moment, I want you to pause and reflect. Think about the times in your life when you tried to look tough. Maybe it was in a confrontation where you raised your voice just to keep from feeling small. Maybe it was in a relationship where you acted cold because you were terrified of being vulnerable. Maybe it was in your career where you relied on intimidation because you doubted your competence. And how did it end? Did it bring you closer to the people you wanted to influence? Did it open doors, create allies, or give you peace? Or did it leave you exhausted, isolated, and quietly afraid that someone would see through the mask? This is the great lie of toughness. It promises control, but delivers chaos. It promises respect, but breeds resentment. It promises strength, but exposes weakness. The tough guy thinks he's winning, but everyone around him sees the truth. They're not impressed, they're calculating. They're not respecting, they're waiting. They're not following, they're leaving. Machiavelli's genius was not in telling people to be cruel, but in teaching them to be strategic. He knew that aggression without intelligence is suicide. He knew that domination without trust is fragile. He knew that real strength is never about being the loudest, it's about being the most indispensable. So here's the awakening. You do not need to act tough to be powerful. You need to be competent. You need to be reliable. You need to be strategic. You need to be the kind of person whose absence is feared more than their presence. That's the kind of fear Machiavelli spoke of, not fear of your anger, but fear of losing your value, power. And maybe, just maybe, this realization hits deeper than you expected. Because it's not just about the men in gyms, bars, or boardrooms. It's about you. It's about the parts of you that still feel the urge to prove something. The parts that still confuse noise with power, intimidation with influence, and performance with reality. The call to action here is not about dominating others, it's about mastering yourself. It's about cutting the strings that make you dance every time someone challenges your ego. It's about learning that silence, restraint, and strategy are not signs of weakness, but of profound strength. It's about dropping the mask you've been wearing, not to reveal fragility, but to reveal authenticity. Because here's the truth. The world doesn't need another tough guy. The world doesn't need more noise, more aggression, more fragile egos hiding behind fists and fury. The world needs men and women who are strong enough to be calm, wise enough to be patient, and strategic enough to know when to act and when to wait. And if you choose this path, everything changes. You will no longer waste energy proving yourself. You will no longer chase shallow respect. You will no longer fear being overlooked. Instead, you will become the person people trust, the person people turn to, the person people would rather have on their side than against them. That's not performance. That's not acting. That's power. So the question is no longer, how can I look tougher? The real question is, how can I become more valuable? How can I cultivate the kind of confidence that doesn't need validation? How can I build the kind of influence that doesn't require intimidation? How can I embody the kind of strength that doesn't need to announce itself? Because when you choose value over volume, strategy over aggression, and influence over intimidation, you don't just look powerful, you are powerful. And that kind of power, once earned, can never be taken away. The game of life, as Machiavelli taught, is not a boxing match. It is a game of chess. The winners are not those who shout the loudest, but those who move with quiet precision. Not those who demand respect, but those who earn it without asking. Not those who act tough, but those who are strong without needing to prove it. So I leave you with this final question. Will you keep exhausting yourself trying to look powerful, or will you step into the quiet strength of becoming truly powerful? The choice, as always, is yours. If this message resonated with you, take a moment right now to support this journey. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next lesson. And more importantly, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me, what part of this message hit you the hardest? What realization about power and toughness will you carry forward in your own life? Your voice matters here, because the strongest communities are not built on noise, but on connection. And together, we can build a space where real strength, quiet, strategic, and authentic becomes the standard.